Why was the room silent the moment she rolled up her sleeve? Colonel Marshall had seen thousands of faces in briefing rooms, battle-hardened Rangers, decorated SEALs, but when his eyes landed on the ink beneath her wrist, the broken sword, etched with 7 fine lines, the color drained from his face, his voice faltered, dropped to a whisper, as if saying her name aloud might summon something. Warrior. Number 26. A deathly silence fell over Fort Harrison's high-ceilinged operations room. No one moved, no one breathed. Lauren Ross didn't flinch. She didn't confirm, didn't deny, just stood there, brown hair cascading past her shoulders. Face unreadable, eyes steady, a ghost from a file that didn't exist. A woman buried beneath more than a decade of lies. Outside, the sun cast long mountain shadows across the compound. The air smelled of dust, oil, and pine. The kind of place America forged warriors, or buried them trying. Lauren stepped out of the admin building alone, her standard-issue boots crunching gravel. Around her, elite operators buzzed with energy. The best from every branch: SEALs, Delta, Special Tactics, combat-proven, loud, cocky, branded with patches, ribbons, years of war. Lauren? She wore nothing. No unit insignia, no campaign badges, just a clean, olive-drab uniform that looked almost new on her. It felt like armor. They noticed, in the tactical classroom. Chatter halted as she entered. No one knew who she was, but they knew what she wasn't. One of them, a SEAL named Jake Miller, was the first to test her. Big shoulders, bigger ego, square jaw. That kind of voice that liked to be heard. "Well, look what the Pentagon coughed up," he smirked. "You here to take notes, sweetheart? Maybe file a report on how the real soldiers sweat?" Laughter burst across the room. Jake flung a binder at her chest. Papers scattered to the floor. She didn't react, didn't even blink. Lauren simply stepped over the mess, eyes forward, and sat in the back row, still, silent, a statue in a storm. Ryan Cooper, Delta Force, leaned in to whisper. She cried before the first break, bet on it. But she didn't as Colonel Marshall entered. The atmosphere shifted, his gravel rough voice cut through the tension. "This is the most demanding joint task force training in the U.S. military. Half of you won't make it past week 1. His eyes swept the room, resting again on Lauren. Something flickered behind his stare. Not doubt, recognition. He hit play on the wall screen. An urban warfare simulation loaded up. Hostile targets, civilian risk. Narrow corridors, tactical choke points. Minimize casualties, maximize extraction. Think, adapt, or watch your squad die. While he spoke, Lauren's pen moved, slow, precise, like she was sketching the battlefield from memory. Not notes, not studying, remembering. Jake saw it too. He leaned toward Ryan again, loud enough to sting. "Still drawing maps, huh? Maybe you should gift us all with a coloring book." More laughter, but Lauren just kept writing, unshaken. The first test came fast. Physical assessment. Out on the obstacle course, the trainees gathered in loose packs, confidence in their posture, ego in their eyes. Lauren stood alone by the water station, sipping from her canteen. Ryan approached, grinning. "Hey, paper soldier, forgot your typewriter?" He flung a full cup of water at her chest. It hit hard, soaking her uniform. The others laughed. Slapped backs. She didn't respond. Just capped her canteen, set it down, and walked toward the starting line. Boots squelching, they kept watching, waiting for her to stumble. But Lauren didn't run like someone proving a point. She moved like someone who'd done this before. Walls, wire, rope climbs, all of it. Clean, efficient, controlled. She finished third. Not for attention, not for redemption. She didn't even celebrate. Just stepped aside and waited for the next instruction. By noon, they'd given her name, Paper Ross. It echoed through the camp, whispered, shouted, scribbled on whiteboards. It followed her to the mess hall, where she sat alone in a corner. Tray untouched, Jake made sure everyone heard him as he passed. Sketching dinner. Now? Across the table, a British officer smirked. She's here to file our reports. Mate, let the real warfighters eat. Lauren speared a piece of chicken with her fork. Ate it slowly, didn't look up. But in the harsh lights, someone finally noticed the scar above her right eyebrow. A thin line. Just a fraction too sharp to be accidental. Seriously, who let you in? Jake's voice carried across the hall. This isn't HR, it's war. She stood. Not angrily, not with defiance. Just stood. Her chair scraped across the floor. Loud. Deliberate. She picked up her tray. Walked to the dish return, left outside. Under the shade of an old oak, her jaw clenched for the first time. Not in anger, in restraint. And then she walked, quiet, measured, toward the next drill, navigation. She was paired with Mason Taylor, Green Beret, all muscle and attitude. Don't slow me down, Paper Ross, he warned, snatching the map. I've got a record to keep. He marched out ahead, barked commands, led the squad in circles. Lauren followed silently, compass in hand, eyes on the ridgelines. They were lost in 30 minutes. This is Bull's asterisk, 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 Mason muttered, spinning the map. They changed the layout. Rodriguez, a Marine sniper, checked his watch. We're burning daylight, man. Lauren stepped forward. Left 300 meters. Followed the dry creek bed, north side of the lightning-struck pine. Mason glared. Then, nothing better to go on, he obeyed. 10 minutes later, they hit the checkpoint. No one thanked her, but no one mocked her either. At the second checkpoint, it happened again. Mason got turned around. Lauren corrected them. And again at the third, they finished first. Ahead of all teams, no one spoke, but eyes began to shift. That night, someone dumped her rucksack on the ground during inspection. Dominic, a stocky ranger, stomped her weathered notebook into the mud. Oops, need a new sketchbook. Lauren cleaned it off, slowly, quietly, packed everything back in without a word. The instructor said nothing. By now, the silence around her had grown heavier than the insults. Later, in the dim light of the barracks, she opened her stained notebook. Inside were hand-drawn schematics, infiltration diagrams, CQB formations, precision layouts of combat zones most operators wouldn't recognize. One page was labeled Compound Infiltration, Herat Province, 2010. She traced the lines with her finger, then quickly closed it when someone approached. Sarah Evans, Army Intel, sharp eyes, sharper words. Nice act, Ross, she said flatly. Playing the long game, huh? Lauren didn't answer. Women like you are the reason we have to work twice as hard. You write a quota into programs like this, then quit when it gets hard, and the rest of us bleed for your weakness. Again, Lauren said nothing. Sarah turned. To leave, you don't belong here, she muttered. And people die when frauds get a uniform. Lauren just kept cleaning her gear, calm, focused. But across the base, behind the tinted window of the administration building, a pair of binoculars tracked her every move. Major Robert Hayes scribbled into a black notebook, then picked up a secure phone. Sir, he said into the receiver, his voice tight. I think we have confirmation. Ross matches the profile. He paused, listening. Yes. Warrior 26, Echo Company, the last one. He stared through the glass, watching her disappear into the shadows of the barracks. I'll continue monitoring, but I'm increasingly certain. Why did she hesitate before touching the rifle? It was just a training weapon, standard issue, nothing special. But Lauren stared at it like it was an artifact from a life she'd buried. A life the world had buried with her. She picked it up. Anyway, hands steady, movements clean. The morning sun crept over the Colorado peaks, throwing long shadows across the makeshift village known as Talabad, a replica of Afghan terrain. Built to break even the best. Mud brick walls, sniper nests, tight alleys that turned men into statistics. The simulation started with a shrill alarm. Jake Miller led Red Team. Predictable, loud, swagger first, plan later. Lauren? She was assigned to Blue Team's rear command, the job they gave the weakest link. The desk job, the one far from the fight. She took her place in the command tent without complaint. Radio headset, clipboard, map. Captain Thompson, overseeing. The exercise handed her the tactical chart. "Don't screw this up," he said flatly. Not out of spite, out of belief. He didn't believe she belonged here. Red Team struck hard within minutes. Blue Team was folding. Operators killed. Vests blinking red. Forward units scattered. The Norwegian commando in charge was barking contradictory orders. It was chaos. Lauren didn't panic. She marked positions on the map with a red grease pencil. Her movements were fast but deliberate. Her voice, when it finally came through the radio, was calm, controlled, like she was conducting a symphony instead of salvaging a collapsing defense. Alpha Squad, pull back east alley. Bravo, flank north through the market. Charlie, hold the fountain. Do not move. There was silence, then pushback. That's suicide. Someone hissed through the comms. "Trust me," Lauren said. Just 2 words, but something in her tone, steel wrapped in ice, cut through the panic. They obeyed. What followed wasn't luck. It wasn't intuition. It was a trap. Lauren had studied Jake's habits. His love for brute force, his predictable overreach. She baited him, surrendered key ground, made it look desperate. Let Red Team surge forward like it was already won. Then she collapsed the walls around him. Charlie held firm. Bravo swept. Behind, Alpha ambushed from the flank. In 3 minutes, it was over. Red Team was wiped. Jake stood alone in the town square, his vest blinking, eyes wide in disbelief. Captain Thompson blew the whistle. Simulation terminated. Blue Team erupted. In cheers, even the Norwegian commando approached Lauren in awe. "Where'd you learn that?" Lauren didn't smile. She set the clipboard down and replied, "In the woods with no map." Jake's eyes burned from across the square. But it wasn't over. During the debrief, Thompson displayed the data. Every movement, every radio call. Lauren's decisions had yielded a 98% success rate. No friendly casualties. Even the instructors rarely scored that high. "Impressive," Thompson muttered, eyes drifting to the faint edge of her sleeve, where the top of the broken sword. Tattoo peeked out. He didn't say anything more, but he was thinking it. The mockery didn't stop. It changed. Pierre Rousseau, French Special Forces, confronted her later. "You're clever. I'll give you that," he sneered. "But paper tricks won't save you when bullets are real. You ever even fired a round outside a simulator?" She didn't reply. He tossed a training manual at her chest. "Go study some more, paper girl." She stared at him, voice low, measured. "You talk a lot." For someone who died in 10 seconds yesterday, the insult hit harder than her silence ever did. Pierre's smirk vanished. She stepped past him, unbothered. But the tides had shifted. Slightly, they were still watching her, still mocking. But now, they were wondering too. Who was this woman who didn't bleed under pressure? Who planned like a colonel and moved like a ghost? That afternoon, at the range, she answered them again. Each shot, center mass. Every grouping, tight, mechanical precision. Her weapon was untouched by vanity. No stickers, no mods. Just function over form. Jake watched her from a few lanes down. His whisper to Ryan Cooper wasn't dismissive this time. It was calculating, and somewhere else. In the shadow of the control tower, Major Hayes was watching too. When she stepped away from the line, the rangemaster marked her target sheet. "Perfect score," he muttered. "Damn near surgical." Lauren just nodded. No celebration, no need for applause, but her silence spoke louder than their noise ever could. That night, they hit her again. A crumpled ball of paper dropped at her feet. Dominic, laughing, she unfolded it, a crude sketch, her face drawn in childish lines, a pencil in one hand, a crying expression. The words "Paper Ross" scrawled in bold across the top. She stared at it for a long moment, then folded it neatly, slipped it into her pocket, sat down, cleaned her boots. But someone else was watching from a distance. Again, behind glass, behind binoculars. Major Hayes. He scribbled into his notebook, reached for the secure line. "Sir, I think we have confirmation. Ross matches the profile." He paused. "Yes. Warrior 26, the survivor." There was silence on the other end. Then, a reply. Hayes' jaw tightened. "I'll proceed with caution." But in his eyes was something different. Now, not suspicion, not curiosity. Something heavier, something like guilt. Why was she staring at the ceiling long after the barracks went quiet? Everyone else had slipped into sleep, some with earbuds, others with exhaustion. But Lauren Ross lay awake, her body still as stone, her eyes locked on the darkened rafters. Above her bunk, the silence around her wasn't peace. It was a countdown. She waited exactly 15 minutes, then slipped silently from her bed. No flashlight, no sound. Just the moonlight guiding her hands as she reached into the hidden compartment. In her boot, a small black device, not regulation, not in any inventory, an encrypted phone, old. Scarred and dangerous, she typed a single message. Hayes knows. Proceed. Seconds passed. Then a reply. Maintain cover. Confirm identity of sword. She erased both, placed the device back into its compartment, then stood there in the shadows. Unmoving, her face bathed in moonlight, revealing something she never showed in daylight. Not fear, but grief. Across the compound, Major Hayes sat alone in his quarters, surrounded by a sea of redacted files. A single black and white photo lay. Before him, blurred faces. Desert uniforms, all but one obscured. A woman in the center, her sleeve rolled up. The broken sword tattoo clear and defiant on her wrist. Hayes picked up the secure line, dialed from memory. "It's me," he said when the voice answered. "I think it's her." A pause. "Yes, Warrior 26 from Echo Company. The only one still breathing." He opened a dusty folder. Operation Nightshade classified. Every name inside had been crossed out in red, except one, Ross L. Warrior 26. Hayes stared at it. "She's hiding in plain sight, sir. The question is, why now?" By morning, Lauren was already running laps on the track. 5 miles, alone. Pre-dawn frost still clung to the chain-link fences. Her breathing was steady, her stride effortless. Captain Thompson watched from the sidelines, coffee in hand. "You're up early, Ross." "I like the quiet, sir." He walked beside her as she cooled down, his tone casual, but his eyes sharp. "Most people run to clear their heads." He said, "You run like you're being chased." She didn't answer. He stopped walking. She was forced to stop too. "I've been reviewing your file." Her shoulders stiffened almost imperceptibly. 8 years of service, no commendations. No flags, no disciplinary actions. No. Anything. He stepped in closer. "It's almost too perfect. Like someone built a career clean enough not to be noticed." Lauren met his gaze, neutral. "Is there a question in there, sir?" Thompson studied her face, then nodded once. "Carry on, specialist." She walked away, but his words followed her like shadows. Later that day, Lauren entered the library, a forgotten part of Fort Harrison where no one went unless ordered. She moved past the shelves without hesitation, straight to the filing cabinets. Year: 2010 to 2015. Region: Middle East, Syria. She opened the folder, found what she was looking for, a local paper, faded, cheap ink. A single paragraph about a mysterious explosion in a village near the Syrian border. No mention of American involvement, no survivors listed. Just a quote from a Pentagon spokesperson. "We have no information regarding any U.S. operations in that area." She stared at the paper too long, and didn't hear the footsteps until it was too late. Didn't take you for the library type. Ross, Major Hayes, she turned, a tactical manual already in her hands. Flipped open as camouflage. Studying close quarters breach protocols. She said. Hayes nodded slowly, glancing toward the filing cabinet, then back to her. You ever been to Syria, Ross? Her eyes didn't move. No, sir. He smiled. The way men smile when they already know the answer. That's strange. You strike me as someone who's traveled. She kept her posture controlled. If you have concerns about my record, sir. I'm sure, Colonel Marshall. Oh, I've seen your record, he interrupted. The question is, which version is real? Before she could respond, his radio crackled. Hayes stepped back. We'll continue this conversation soon, Specialist. He disappeared down the hallway. Lauren didn't move for a long time. Then quietly, slowly, closed the cabinet drawer. She needed more than answers now. She needed an ally. That evening, during equipment maintenance, Lauren slipped away from the barracks and crossed the perimeter fence. Just outside Fort Harrison stood a forgotten gas station, a dusty relic from the 60s with cracked pavement, and a faded Coca-Cola sign. It was a local haunt, unofficial, unregulated. Inside, the air smelled of coffee and old wood. Behind the counter stood Bill Henderson, Vietnam vet. Weathered face, trembling hands, a man the system had moved on from. Lauren approached, casual. Heard you make a good cup of coffee? Bill gave her a long, slow look, then nodded toward. The pot? Help yourself. $2 or free. If you've seen combat. She reached for her wallet. Her sleeve rode up, just slightly, and Bill froze. His eyes locked on her wrist. Sweet Jesus, he whispered. That's a broken sword. The mug in his hand trembled. He glanced at the door, then back at her. You're her, aren't you? Lauren stiffened. Her? 42 from Black Ridge Zero, he said in a voice barely above breath. Echo Company, you're the one who made it out. For the first time in years. She flinched. How do you know that designation? Bill looked around. His eyes weren't confused now. They were sharp. Not here. In the back. In the small cluttered office behind the gas station, Bill locked the door and pulled out. An old metal box, inside a USB drive. My son was David Henderson, he said, emotion tightening every word. Warrior 17. Lauren felt her breath catch. I know, she said softly. He didn't make it out. They told me it was an accident, Bill said, voice hollow. But before the mission, David sent me this, said if anything happened. Someone might come looking, said they'd have the tattoo. Lauren took the drive. Her hands trembled. I didn't know he left anything behind. He didn't trust them, Bill said. Whoever them is. He looked at her, eyes searching. You were there when he died, weren't you? Lauren paused. Grief flickered across her face. Yes. Bill swallowed hard. Was it quick? Did he suffer? She hesitated, then gave him mercy. It was quick. He didn't feel it. The old man crumpled, shoulders sagging with years of held pain. Thank you, he whispered. I've been waiting. 11 years. Lauren slipped the USB into her pocket. It felt heavier than a weapon. There's a room under this place, Bill said suddenly. David set it up. Thought it might be needed someday. Combos 172613. She looked at him. How'd he know? Bill looked away. He always said, the sword may break, but the war wouldn't end. Lauren returned to Fort Harrison just after dusk. Her steps were measured, purposeful, but her mind? It was miles away. David's USB was burning in her pocket. Every breath she took felt like it might be the last one before something shatters. And as she passed the obstacle course, Jake Miller was waiting, watching. But he wasn't mocking now. He was quiet, calculating. He said nothing as she walked by. But someone else watched from above. Hayes. At his window, and in his eyes was something new fear. Because Warrior 26 was done hiding. and Echo Company's ghosts were starting to wake. Why did the cursor hesitate before she pressed enter? Lauren had slipped into the base's outdated computer lab under cover of night. While most of Fort Harrison crowded into the mess hall, laughing over trays of lukewarm food and recycled jokes, she moved silently, a shadow slipping between cracks no one thought to monitor. The room was small, forgotten, a relic. She chose the terminal farthest from the door, the one that offered full view of the hallway. From her boot, she pulled out two things: a compact signal jammer and David's USB drive. She didn't breathe as she plugged it in. The screen flickered. A single encrypted file appeared. No label, no date, just an empty box blinking for a password. Lauren typed it slowly. Broken Sword echoed the file opened, a video, and then David Henderson's face. It hit her like a hammer. He looked tired, worn. Not the laughing man she remembered. His eyes were bloodshot, his cheeks hollow, his voice a raspy whisper barely holding itself together. If you're watching this, I'm already gone, and you're one of the few who made it out. Lauren's breath hitched. They'll tell you Nightshade was a routine counter-terrorism op, that Echo Company was deployed to eliminate threats in northern Syria, that we failed. But that's not the truth. We were never meant to succeed. We weren't even meant to survive. The screen cut to grainy photos, surveillance shots, satellite overlays, then something else, something far older. A sphere, metallic, about the size of a helmet, covered in etched symbols that shifted. Subtly, unnaturally, the Scythian device. David's voice continued. They said it was Cold War tech, Russian, maybe even alien, but it wasn't. It was ancient. Predating civilization. We weren't sent to neutralize terrorists. We were sent to steal this. Lauren's jaw tightened. She remembered it. Now, flashes of memory like pieces of broken glass. The underground chamber. Walls lined with markings she couldn't read. And that feeling, like something was watching them. The device wasn't just a weapon. It was a control mechanism. When activated, it rewrote people. Not killed, not hurt, erased. Left them alive but hollow, empty vessels. They became obedient, silent, willing, like puppets with no strings. The video cut to something that made Lauren's skin crawl. Footage operators. Watching civilians strapped to chairs. Eyes wide, faces slack, as the sphere pulsed with a sickly white light. Lauren remembered the light. It had burned behind her eyelids for years. We were ordered to witness the demonstration. To prove. It worked. Then we were ordered to silence everyone in that room. Prisoners. Scientists. Locals. We were no longer soldiers. We were executioners. She clenched her fist, the nails digging into her palm. Then something went wrong. Locals attacked the site mid-extraction. Chaos, gunfire. The device started reacting, emitting waves. And that's when General Richards gave the final order. The screen cut to a message log, redacted comms, a single line visible. Sanitize site. Terminate all assets, Echo Company included. They buried us alive. I escaped through. The Western Tunnel. I don't know how many others made it. Probably none. Lauren's vision blurred. If you're hearing this, they'll come for you too. You carry the mark. You know the truth. Artemis isn't a myth. It's real, it's alive, and it's still working from inside the Pentagon. They control the chain of command. They bury missions. They erase. People, the sword is broken, but you're still alive. That means the war isn't over. The video ended, and for a moment, there was silence. No breathing, no blinking, just a woman in an empty room. Staring at the ghost of the man she couldn't save, Lauren wiped her eyes, took the USB, destroyed her traces, killed the jammer, then stood to leave and stopped cold. Someone was in the hallway, watching. A shape emerged from the shadows, Sarah Evans. The Army intelligence officer stepped inside, her voice careful. Interesting evening research, Ross. Lauren said nothing. Sarah shut the door quietly behind her, arms crossed. How long have you been watching me? Long enough to know you're not who you say you are. Lauren's hand twitched near her boot, where a blade waited, but Sarah wasn't armed. Not visibly. Lauren measured her breath. What do you know about Operation Nightshade? She asked, slowly. Sarah's eyes narrowed, and for the first time. Surprise. Nothing, she admitted. It's not in any database I can access. Lauren took a chance. And Artemis? That pause told her everything. Rumors, Sarah said. A special access program. So black. Even the Joint Chiefs pretend. It doesn't exist. Lauren made a decision. Fast, risky, necessary. I need to know where you stand, she said, voice flat. With the chain of command. Or with the truth. Sarah hesitated, then stepped forward. I stand with the Constitution. I swore to defend. Even when the enemy wears a 4-star uniform. For the first time since arriving at Fort Harrison. Lauren nodded and lowered her guard. Meet me at the eastern perimeter in 30 minutes, she said. Alone or don't come at all. Sarah nodded once, then left. As the door shut behind her, Lauren exhaled. It had begun. The ghosts of Echo Company. We're going to stay buried, not this time. Exactly 30 minutes later, Sarah slipped through the shadows behind the barracks, following the drainage path eastward. Just like Lauren had described, she didn't speak, just waited. From behind a cluster of trees, Lauren emerged. You're early. So are you. Lauren led her through the culvert under the fence, through the woods, toward the back of the gas station, not to the main store, to the shed behind it, a trapdoor hidden beneath crates. She punched in the code, 172,613. The door groaned open, revealing stairs into darkness. What the hell is this place? Sarah whispered, Insurance, Lauren said. David Henderson's last message to the world. They descended into the bunker, a tight concrete room lit by dim LEDs. Military cot, maps on the walls, surveillance photos, diagrams, files, all marked with names, call signs, Kier, Mia, unknown. Sarah's breath caught. You're Warrior 26, she said, staring at the photo on the wall. But that's not your real name. Is it? Lauren didn't answer, just pulled open a cabinet. Inside, stacks of flash drives, tactical gear, and a black binder with one name, General William Richards. I came here for Hayes, she said. He's the link. Hayes was Artemis CIA liaison during Syria. When I found out he'd been assigned to Fort Harrison, I pulled every string I had to get myself into this training cycle. You're not just hiding, Sarah realized. You're hunting, Lauren. Nodded. And Hayes is the first domino. Sarah picked up a file. If what you're saying is true, that Echo Company was executed to cover up a weapons program, that's not just black ops. That's treason. Lauren looked at her. No. That's war. Why did she return to the base that night? Lauren Ross had enough evidence in her hands to disappear. She could have vanished across a border, blown the whistle from the outside. But she didn't, because ghosts don't run. They finish what others are too afraid to start. She and Sarah Evans moved quickly back through the forest, into the shadows of Fort Harrison, just as the midnight watch began their rounds. The lights of the barracks cast pale circles on the gravel, but no one saw them. Slipped back inside, Lauren returned to her bunk. It looked the same sheets, same dull pillow, but something had changed. Her pack had been moved, not enough to seem obvious, but Lauren had memorized the angle of every strap, the weight of every zipper. A hand had been in it, and she already knew whose Major Hayes stood alone in the secure comm center, staring at the blinking red light on the encrypted terminal. He hadn't slept. His office was darker than usual. Even the overhead fluorescents had been turned off, replaced by the cold green glow of classified messages on screen. He was rereading one in particular. Warrior 26 has breached Protocol Black. she has accessed Nightshade Archive and initiated unsanctioned contact with Intel Asset E7. Containment authorized. The final line was worse. Execute contingency. Crucible. Hayes leaned back in his chair, fingers trembling. He whispered to himself, "They're going to erase her." The next morning, things felt off. The air in the camp was heavier. The instructors, tighter. No jokes, no sideways glances. The casual cruelty that had shadowed Lauren since day one? Gone, replaced by silence. Calculated, quiet silence. She moved through the chow hall like a hunted animal. Eyes down, senses sharp, aware. Jake Miller and Dominic, usually the loudest in the room, now spoke in hushed tones. It wasn't respect. It was restraint. Someone had told them something. Lauren took her tray outside, sat alone beneath the satellite tower, near the motor pool. That's when Sarah appeared, pretending to scroll her phone, sipping coffee like nothing had changed. But her expression said everything. "Your name's on the watch list," she whispered. Lauren kept her fork moving. "Who added it?" "Not Hayes," Sarah said. "He tried to stall. Someone above him pulled rank, used Artemis credentials." Lauren's jaw clenched. "How much time?" "Maybe 48 hours before they make it official. You'll be reassigned. Then you disappear." Quietly, Lauren didn't reply. Instead, she looked past Sarah, toward the mountain range in the distance, her eyes hollow with memory. "We need to hit them before they move." Sarah leaned closer. "I might have something. I tracked Hayes' secure comms. He's scheduled for an off-site meet this afternoon. One-click encrypted line to a Denver call center listed under a shell company. Same network Artemis used." During the Cairo operation, Lauren blinked. "That's not a meeting. That's a drop." Sarah nodded. "We intercept it. Follow the courier. Get physical proof." Lauren stood, tossed her tray without eating. "We'll need wheels." By 1400 hours, a black SUV rolled out of Fort Harrison's north gate. Sarah drove. Lauren rode passenger, dressed in civilian clothes from the Lost. Property bin. The Denver satellite office sat off a long industrial corridor. No sign. No security. Just a small parking lot and a coffee truck parked too perfectly nearby. They waited. 14 minutes later, a man in a light gray blazer exited. The building, sunglasses, no phone, courier. He stepped up to the coffee truck, paid in cash, got a cup, then walked to a nearby trash bin and tossed the coffee, cup unopened, into the can. Lauren muttered, "Dead drop." Microdrive embedded in the cup. As he walked off, she and Sarah moved. They retrieved the cup. Inside the lid, a nearly invisible sliver of carbon fiber, thinner than a SIM card, taped under the rim data. Sarah's voice trembled. "Let's go." But Lauren didn't move. She was staring across the street. A woman in a blue windbreaker, average height, blonde ponytail, pretending to look at her phone. Then another figure, man in maintenance coveralls. Then two more. Lauren's heart stopped. We're not the only ones watching this drop. Sarah whispered, "Artemis?" Lauren's breath shortened. "They're here." They ran. Through the back alley, over the chain-link fence. A bullet snapped off the brick near Lauren's head. Sarah screamed. They dropped behind a dumpster. Breath ragged, hands slick. Lauren's instincts kicked in. She reached into her waistband, pulled a Glock 43 she'd stolen from an unused supply cage the week before. "They won't shoot to kill," she whispered. "Not yet." Sarah blinked. "Why not?" "They want it back first." Lauren scanned the shadows. One figure advanced too close. Pop. One round to the leg. The man dropped, screaming. Not dead, but out. They'll retreat. Call for extraction. Lauren grabbed Sarah's arm. "We need to lose them in the tunnels." Tunnels? There's always tunnels. 10 minutes later, they surfaced in an abandoned storm drain behind an empty train yard. Sarah collapsed to the ground, coughing. Lauren opened the microdrive. Inside, Hundreds of files, encrypted, but one stuck out. W26_sim_final orders. She opened it and froze. On screen, Lauren's face. A classified order, signed and stamped. Terminate with extreme prejudice. Subject, Ross. Lauren, alias Warrior 26. Under it, a blurred image of Echo Company. The last known group shot. Her face circled in red. Sarah leaned over. "Oh my God." Lauren closed the file. "They weren't watching me because I was a threat," she said quietly. "They were watching me because I'm the last piece of the machine they couldn't control." Her hands trembled, not from fear, from clarity. For 11 years, she thought she was the survivor. Now she realized she was the target. Back at Fort Harrison, Hayes stared at the empty report file. No word from the courier, no return from the drop team. He knew. He stood at the window, watching the sun dip behind the hills. Then pulled a pen from his drawer and began to write. It wasn't a report. It was a confession. The lights buzzed above him. Then, a knock. A man entered. Civilian clothes, face forgettable, badge, dawn clearance. Alpha Black. "You failed." "Robert." Hayes didn't flinch. "She knows. She has proof." The man placed a pistol on the desk. "You have 10 minutes, or we do it for you." Hayes stared at the weapon. Then, for the first time in years, he wept. Why did the paper feel heavier than any weapon she'd ever carried? Lauren sat in the old gas station bunker, staring at the printed kill order in her lap. Her name at the top, bold and final. Below it, the redacted lines of authorization. But one was clear. Signature, Jen, William R. Richards. Title, Joint Chief. Strategic Initiatives Program Artemis. He was still active. Still protected. Still killing in the dark. Across from her, Sarah Evans paced, chewing her lip, eyes darting between the printout and her encrypted laptop. If this goes public, the fallout could shake every intelligence branch we have. She whispered. Lauren didn't respond. She hadn't spoken in nearly 30 minutes. She sat like stone, the kind of stillness that precedes storms. Finally, she looked up. This was never about exposure. Sarah frowned. Then what? It's about truth. Truth delivered. To the man who signed our deaths like he was ordering lunch. Sarah shook her head. "You want to face him?" Lauren's voice was calm. Too calm. "I want him to look me in the eyes before the walls fall down." By morning, Hayes was dead. Gunshot to the head. Ruled as suicide before the medics even zipped the body bag. His office sealed. His files erased. His laptop wiped cleaner than its factory settings. But someone moved too fast. Because Sarah's embedded signal tracker, planted 3 days ago during their staged accidental run-in, pinned. She and Lauren rushed to the uplink cave near the range, where Sarah decrypted the burst transmission just seconds before. The signal went dark. Location trace, Washington, D.C. Destination, Fort Meade. Program ID, Artemis Nightshade _archive _RM. Lauren, read the coordinates. "They're consolidating the files," she whispered. "They're preparing to bury it all. Wipe the system clean." Sarah leaned in. "You want to stop that?" "You're not going to do it from Fort Harrison." Lauren's jaw locked. "Then we go east." Sarah blinked. "That's suicide." Lauren stood, slipping the kill order into her vest. So was Syria. Getting out wasn't easy. Lauren's name was flagged. Her access revoked. A transfer order had been filed, but no destination listed. She was being ghosted. From inside, Sarah leveraged her clearance to forge temporary orders. Joint task relocation. She embedded Lauren as a driver for a special logistics unit headed for Andrews Air Force Base. They left at dawn in a military truck convoy. No fanfare. No farewell. As they passed through the gate, Jake Miller stood at the armory, watching. He didn't salute, didn't wave, but for once, he didn't smirk either. He just nodded. Barely. Maybe he finally understood. Maybe she wasn't the dead weight after all. By the second day, they reached D.C. in a nondescript black van. Rain fell in sheets across the freeway. Traffic slowed, tension didn't. Sarah briefed Lauren in the motel room. A wall map covered in red markers, printed schematics of Fort Meade's interior, and one high-res image of a tall man in four-star uniform. General William R. Richards. He was scheduled to appear at a secure briefing in exactly 28 hours. Lauren stared at the photograph. Her finger traced the lines of his face. She remembered his voice. That night in Syria, he hadn't been shouting. He'd sounded bored, cold. Echo Company has fulfilled its function. Initiate total site purge. Sarah was watching her. You freeze now, and this dies with us. Lauren looked up. I'm not here to freeze. She pulled a patch from her bag, the one she'd kept all these years, the one with the broken sword. She stitched it to her shoulder and exhaled. They breached Fort Meade through the service corridor, an access tunnel that had been closed since 2007. Sarah's intel credentials reactivated the manual locks. Inside, the base felt sterile, silent, like a place built to erase. Lauren moved like she had in Herat, like she had in Kandahar, quiet steps. Scanning corners, every breath calibrated. They reached the archive chamber before sunrise. 2 guards, standard loadout, not Artemis operatives. Lauren incapacitated them clean. Silent takedowns, non-lethal, just enough to make them forget the next 5 minutes. Inside, the room glowed. Dozens of servers, a cold light humming from the ceiling. Sarah moved to the nearest terminal, plugged in a data key. Give me 3 minutes. Lauren stood watch. But something gnawed at her. The silence was too perfect, too staged. She turned and saw the red light blinking in the corner. A camera. Too late. The fire door slammed shut. Steel clicked into place. They were sealed in. Then came the voice. Calm. Cold, familiar. Warrior 26. A screen flickered to life, and General Richards' face filled it. Older now, grayer, but the same dead eyes. I wondered how long it would take you to crawl out of your grave. Lauren stared at him. You tried to burn the evidence, but you forgot something. She held up the kill order. I'm still breathing. He tilted his head. I gave you every chance to stay buried, peaceful, unbothered. You came looking for war. No, she said. You brought war. I just came to end it. Richards chuckled. There's no end. You think this is about Artemis? About Echo Company? You think your little data key changes the world. Lauren stepped forward. I don't need to change the world. I just need to show them who is pulling the trigger. Sarah's laptop beeped. Upload complete. Lauren didn't. Blink. This feed's not just recording, Sarah said. Standing. It's broadcasting. Across every secure terminal tied to internal oversight. Richards froze. Lauren stepped closer to the screen. I wanted you to see it. She tore the patch from her arm, slapped it against the lens. The sword may be broken, but the hand still holds. Richard's face contorted for the first time. Not rage, not fear, recognition. She remembered now. He'd said those words once to her, on the night he'd recruited her into Echo. She was never just a name on a list. She was his proof that control could be absolute. And now? She was proof that truth bleeds. The screen went black. Sirens began to wail. Sarah grabbed the drive. Time to vanish. They escaped the base through fire tunnels. Lauren kept her breathing steady. But she could already hear the media storm in her mind. Not her name. Just the files. Just the mission. Just the truth. The next morning, a story leaked. No byline, no names. Just whistleblower reveals classified kill program targeting U.S. soldiers. By noon, Congress had called an emergency session. By nightfall, Artemis was a word everyone in Washington suddenly remembered hearing before, and General William R. Richards was nowhere to be found. Why did the air feel different in D.C. that morning? It wasn't the fog or the wind sweeping off the Potomac. It was the stillness, the kind that comes just before something ruptures, the kind that creeps up the spine of anyone who's seen combat and makes them pause. And listen, Lauren Ross was listening. She stood in a parking garage 2 blocks from the Capitol, dressed in a black windbreaker, hair pulled back, a phone in one pocket and a microtaped wire in the other. Sarah Evans leaned beside her, wearing glasses she didn't need and a scarf that hid a transmitter. Below them, a convoy of tinted SUVs rolled past, Department of Defense vehicles. Lauren already knew who was inside. General William R. Richards. He wasn't gone. He hadn't disappeared. He'd rebranded, retired, yes, but now advising private security firms, consulting for international intelligence task forces, whispering into ears behind closed doors, still Artemis, still dangerous, still breathing. And Lauren was done letting monsters breathe. The plan was simple, not loud, not lethal, but final. Sarah had leaked intel about a quiet deposition Richards was scheduled for. Off the books, supposedly internal, but really, it was a media cleanup, a carefully worded legal performance. They wouldn't let him fall, just fade. Lauren couldn't let that happen. The moment the convoy turned into the underground garage, Sarah slipped out first, dressed like a mid-level aide. She breezed through the first checkpoint with a lanyard from a former life. Lauren followed 5 minutes later, disguised as a courier. By the time Richard stepped out of the SUV and into the cold marble lobby, Lauren was already waiting, standing beside a column. Pretending to scroll through a clipboard, she saw him. He didn't see her, not at first. Not until she stepped forward. General Richards. He stopped, turned, and in that flicker of a moment, the way his eyes widened, the way his hand twitched toward the security detail that wasn't fast enough, Lauren knew he had never believed she'd survive. And certainly not that she'd make it this far. She reached into her coat, pulled out the file, the original, paper, ink, stamped, his signature on the Echo Company kill order. She handed it to him and said nothing, just looked into his eyes. The way you look at a storm you finally walk through. He took it slowly, looked down, read the top line. Then up at her. You're making a mistake, he said quietly. No, she replied. I already made that mistake. I came home. I trusted you. I stayed silent. He smirked, just barely. You think this means anything? I think it means everything. She stepped closer. I'm not here to kill you. I'm not here to destroy you. I'm here to remove the silence you wrapped yourself in. Sarah stepped forward from the hall, her phone already recording. The red light blinking. Richards froze. Smile, Sarah said softly. You're about to be famous. By noon, the footage was everywhere, unfiltered, unedited, unmistakable. A 4-star general, the woman he erased. The order he signed, panic, swept through the chain of command. Investigations reopened, testimonies called, protection stripped, and Artemis torn into the light inch by inch. A congressional hearing was announced within 24 hours. Lauren didn't attend. She wasn't invited. She watched from a safe house, no lights, just a small laptop and a bitter cup of black coffee on the screen. Politicians stumbled through apologies and shock. Intelligence officials twisted words. But one congresswoman, old, sharp, not afraid, held up the Echo Company photo. 42 names, no explanation, one survivor. If that's not a scandal, then we've redefined treason. No one clapped, but the room was silent for a long time. 2 weeks later, Lauren sat alone in a cemetery in Pennsylvania. No gravestone had her name on it, but she was surrounded by markers that should have never been there. David, Sophia, Navarro, Crane, Brixton. Some were buried, some were not. She knelt and placed the broken sword patch at the base of a tree, then sat back on the grass. Fingers trailing through the roots. Sarah found her an hour later. You okay? Lauren didn't answer right away. "I keep waiting to feel finished." Sarah sat beside her. "You're not finished." "I know." Lauren pulled a folded page from her coat, the last letter David had written before Syria. The last line read, "If we're ghosts, maybe we're meant to haunt, just long enough for someone to listen." She folded it again, stood, turned back toward the gravel road. Sarah walked beside her. As they reached the truck, Sarah asked quietly, "What now?" Lauren opened the door, paused, and said, "Now we make sure this never happens again." Somewhere in D.C., another name was being erased from a server. Somewhere in another country, a quiet voice whispered, "The sword is broken." And far from headlines, one woman disappeared again. Not as a ghost this time, but as a warning. You can bury names, you can burn files, you can kill squads, but dignity doesn't die. It moves, it endures, it waits, and when it returns, it doesn't raise its voice, it simply acts. Why did the air feel different in D.C. that morning? It wasn't the fog or the wind sweeping off the Potomac. It was the stillness, the kind that comes just before something ruptures. The kind that creeps up the spine of anyone who's seen combat and makes them pause and listen. Lauren Ross was listening. She stood in a parking garage 2 blocks from the Capitol, dressed in a black windbreaker, hair pulled back, a phone in one pocket and a micro-taped wire in the other. Sarah Evans leaned beside her, wearing glasses she didn't need and a scarf that hid a transmitter. Below them, a convoy of tinted SUVs rolled past. Department of Defense vehicles. Lauren already knew who was inside. General William R. Richards. He wasn't gone. He hadn't disappeared. He'd rebranded, retired, yes, but now advising private security firms, consulting for international intelligence task forces, whispering into ears behind closed doors. Still Artemis, still dangerous, still breathing. And Lauren was done letting monsters breathe. The plan was simple, not loud, not lethal, but final. Sarah had leaked intel about a quiet deposition Richards was scheduled for. Off the books, supposedly internal, but really, it was a media cleanup. A carefully worded legal performance. They wouldn't let him fall, just fade. Lauren couldn't let that happen. The moment the convoy turned into the underground garage, Sarah slipped out first, dressed like a mid-level aide. She breezed through the first checkpoint with a lanyard from a former life. Lauren followed 5 minutes later, disguised as a courier. By the time Richards stepped out of the SUV and into the cold marble lobby, Lauren was already waiting, standing beside a column. Pretending to scroll through a clipboard, she saw him. He didn't see her. Not at first. Not until she stepped forward. "General Richards." He stopped, turned, and in that flicker of a moment, the way his eyes widened, the way his hand twitched toward the security detail that wasn't fast enough, Lauren knew he had never believed she'd survive. And certainly not that she'd make it this far. She reached into her coat, pulled out the file, the original, paper, ink stamped, his signature on the Echo Company kill order. She handed it to him and said nothing. Just looked into his eyes. The way you look at a storm you finally walked through. He took it slowly, looked down, read the top line, then up at her. "You're making a mistake," he said quietly. "No," she replied. "I already made that mistake. I came home. I trusted you. I stayed silent." He smirked, just barely. "You think this means anything?" "I think it means everything." She stepped closer. "I'm not here to kill you. I'm not here to destroy you. I'm here to remove the silence you wrapped yourself in." Sarah stepped forward from the hall, her phone already recording. The red light blinking. Richards froze. "Smile," Sarah said softly. "You're about to be famous." By noon, the footage was everywhere. Unfiltered, unedited, unmistakable. A 4-star general. The woman he erased. The order he signed. Panic swept through the chain of command. Investigations reopened. Testimonies called. protection stripped, and Artemis? Torn into the light, inch by inch, a congressional hearing was announced within 24 hours. Lauren didn't attend. She wasn't invited. She watched from a safe house. No lights. Just a small laptop and a bitter cup of black coffee on the screen. Politicians stumbled through apologies in shock. Intelligence officials twisted words. But one congresswoman, old, sharp, not afraid, held up the Echo Company photo. 42 names, no explanation, one survivor. If that's not a scandal, then we've redefined treason. No one clapped, but the room was silent for a long time. 2 weeks later, Lauren sat alone in a cemetery in Pennsylvania. No gravestone had her name on it, but she was surrounded by markers that should have never been there. David, Sophia, Navarro, Crane, Brixton. Some were buried, some were not. She knelt and placed the broken sword patch at the base of a tree, then sat back on the grass. Fingers trailing through the roots. Sarah found her an hour later. "You okay?" Lauren didn't answer right away. "I keep waiting to feel finished." Sarah sat beside her. "You're not finished." "I know." Lauren pulled a folded page from her coat. The last letter David had written before Syria. The last line read, "If we're ghosts, maybe we're meant to haunt. Just long enough for someone to listen." She folded it again, stood, turned back toward the gravel road. Sarah walked beside her. As they reached the truck, Sarah asked quietly, "What now?" Lauren opened the door, paused, and said, "Now we make sure this never happens again." Somewhere in D.C., another name was being erased from a server. Somewhere in another country, a quiet voice whispered, "The sword is broken." And far from headlines, one woman disappeared again, not as a ghost this time, but as a warning. You can bury names, you can burn files, you can kill squads, but dignity doesn't die. It moves, it endures, it waits, and when it returns, it doesn't raise its voice, it simply acts.